So good morning, good morning. Happy Tu B'Shvat, Jewish Arbor Day, New Year for trees, Rosh Hashanah La'ilanot. Good morning. So today is a custom to take from the 7 fruits that Israel is famous for, and a fruit that you haven't eaten this season, and make Borei Pri Ha'etz and Shechianu. So I want to start off with a buxer. If you've seen this is called buxer in Yiddish. It's carob, St. John's bread, and it takes 70 years for this fruit to grow. And when you taste it, it tastes like chocolate a little bit, like carob chocolate, if you have ever had it. So I'm going to put it down. When you open it up, there's little pits inside. I gave it out at Hebrew school on Tuesday when there's a very big hit. So what's the story of the buxer and how does it connect to Tu B'Shvat? So have you ever heard of Choni HaMagal, who lived by the time of the second temple's destruction? He was a great sage. So you might have heard the story of the rainmaker. There was a drought in Israel and the Jews were suffering. So Choni drew a circle around himself and he stood in the center of town and he said to God, I'm not moving till you rake the rain. And sure enough, torrential rain started to come. It filled all the cisterns. It's what LA needed. They needed a Choni HaMagal. And then there was too much rain. So Choni had to tell God, okay, we got it. So Choni was a rainmaker. He was such a great sage that he was able to implore God to bring rain. Anyway, so the story of Choni HaMagal with the buxer, I always found it a little sad, but if you know Rip Van Winkle, they took the story from Choni HaMagal. So if you've heard the story, I'm sorry for being repetitive for those who don't remember, but Choni was taking a stroll and he sees an old man planting a tree. So he says, what are you planting? He says, I'm planting a buxer tree. So he says, really? Why would you plant a buxer tree when it takes 70 years to grow and you're not even going to be around to enjoy it? He says, what do you mean? I'm planting for the future. I'm planting for my children, children's children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. And God did not appreciate that question from Rabbi Choni. Suddenly, Rabbi Choni felt himself getting drowsy and he went to sit under a tree to relax, and he fell asleep and he slept for 70 years. And God made a tree like grow over him. When he wakes up 70 years later, he doesn't realize he's napped for 70 years. He comes out and he sees the buxer tree had grown and this buxer. He's wondering what? And he goes back into town and he doesn't recognize his own hometown. Everything looks different. And he asks a few people, do you know a guy, Choni HaMagal? Choni? He disappeared 70 years ago. We have no idea what happened to him.
Oh my.
He even comes to his own house and it must be his great-granddaughter opens the door. He says, is this Choni HaMagal's house? She says, they used to me, but he disappeared 70 years ago. And he goes to the Beis Medrash, and the story goes, he says to God, no one knows me, no one recognizes me, take me away, take my life, because there's nothing here for me. No one knows me anymore. And he passes away short after. So the story is really the story of the buxer, how you don't plant. Tu B'Shvat is not about planting only for yourself. It's about planting, metaphorically also speaking, for the future generations. And there's a very, very fascinating insight into Tu B'Shvat. In 1963, I don't know if you've heard, have you heard the story about how they found the archaeological dig, the palm seeds? Remember that story?
Vaguely.
Vaguely. So I'll repeat it quickly, very quickly. So I don't know if I shared this once before, that in 1963, Yigdal Yadin was doing an archaeological dig in Masada. And based on certain documents that they found, that there was a food storage house also in Masada. So they went to that location and they found dried out date palm seeds. and they put it in Bar Ilan University. And about 40 years later, 56, 50, yeah, a Professor Levy decided she was a botanist, she was a scientist, she's going to try to plant these seeds. And she took it to Kibbutz Kidari. Why? There, the soil very much replicates the source of where the seeds come from. You know, they can date the seeds. And she plants it, and she has no hope. But lo and behold, a palm tree grows, a date tree. But there's no fruit because it's a male species. So what does she call the tree? Mesushalach, Methuselah. Who's Methuselah? If you remember from the book of Genesis, he lived the longest ever, like 969 years. He lived in the era of Noah with the flood, the son of Enoch. And she names him Methuselah, Mesushalach. And it's a phenomenon, right? Because from dried out seeds. Anyway, they never hoped to find female seeds, but a few years, and these seeds are dated from the Second Temple era. Now they're doing an archaeological dig in the Judean desert near Jericho, and they find again seeds. I mean, like, what luck to find the second pack of seeds dried out. And Professor Levy finds out about it, and she plants it also thinking, who knows what's going to happen. And guess what? This is over many months, by the way. A female date tree grows. And she names her Chana. Why Chana? But Chana is in the book of Samuel, or the book of the prophets. Chana was the mother of Samuel the prophet. She was a woman who could not have children for many, many years. So she went to Shiloh, to the tabernacle, and she prays there. I don't know if you remember the story. Eli, the priest, says, who are you? You must be drunk, because she was praying out loud. In those days, you didn't pray out loud. And that's how we have our prayers. From Chana, we learned how to pray where we move our lips, and we not pray out loud. We move our lips. In the olden days, they wouldn't move their lips. And that's how we have how to pray from Chana. And she gives birth to a little boy, and he grows up to be Samuel the prophet. So she names this tree Chana, reflective of the original Chana. Now they decide to pollinate Methuselah with Chana. And guess what? A few years later, a date tree with dates grow. And the whole press comes out, and there's a TV segment on it in the news. And a guy says, Borei Priya Eitz and Shechianu. And they said the dates were plump, and they were delicious, and they were juicy, and they were just gorgeous. And now, interesting fact is, it says Israel is the land of milk and honey, Eretz V'as Chalav Udvash. So you would say bee honey. Honey comes from a bee. But the Talmud says, the Gemara says, it's not referring to bee honey, it's referring to date honey. So this just underscores that idea that these beautiful dates grow in Israel. So why am I bringing up the story? Because today's Tu B'Shvat, and it's celebrated in the United States of America in the winter. And it doesn't make sense. Why would you celebrate the birthday of the trees, the beauty of the trees, the new year of the trees in the winter? So many people say, well, in the land of Israel, you're already seeing spring. The buds are coming out. That's true. But we're not living in Israel. We're living in diaspora. We're living all over the world. And the answer really is the story of the Jewish people and the story of who we are and our mission in this world. When trees in the winter get the snow and the rain and those nutrients underground, the roots are seeping and taking in all that wonderful energy so that they can produce fruits and flowers in the spring and summer. So winter is really the time when the trees are getting their energy to be able to produce. So Tu B'Shvat doesn't celebrate the flower, maybe. It celebrates potential. It celebrates who we could be. But if you want to reach your true potential and produce fruits and to produce beautiful flowers, You need to plant, and you need to make sure your roots are strong. You're getting the water, you're getting the sun, you're getting the rain and the snow. Because we all know it's not what's on the surface, it's below the surface. A tree can only flower and bloom and give forth fruit if it has the roots are strong. So Tu B'Shvat is a celebration of the potential of mankind. Ki Adam Eitz Asada. Man is compared to the fruit of the tree in the field. That's who we are. And if you want to dig a little deeper, no pun intended, the story of Mesushal and Chan is the story of the Jewish nation. How many times were we looked upon like the dried palm seed, dried out, never going to produce anything? They're a small little strand of sand on the sea. The Jewish nation will never survive the persecutions and the attacks and the killings and the concentration camps. And time again, we were planted and replanted, and we flourished and grew and produced. So never underestimate the power of the Jewish soul and the Jewish nation. Even when we look dried out and nothing will come from them, time and time again, not only we got out of the DP camps, the most successful businesses and companies and industries and breakthroughs were through Jewish scientists, poets, writers, doctors, physicians, Freud, Einstein, Marx, three of the greatest thinkers, and Darwin, the only one who was not Jewish. And you could see, because he decided we come from the animal life, monkeys, apes. So you see, this is the Tu B'Shvat is the story of who we are. You have to make sure your roots are strong, get what you need, and then you produce potential to produce in the future. Our potential is what has to be nurtured. And also that the Jewish people endure, as we see, and we can just see in our modern day times, the hostages come out. Nobody said it better. They look like Holocaust survivors. They are Holocaust survivors, not like. They are. Not are like. People said they look like. They are. They've just survived the Holocaust in their lives. And so Tu B'Shvat gives us hope. The Jewish nation will endure, will survive, will grow, and will flourish and blossom. That's who we are as a people. So today, to celebrate Tu B'Shvat, of course, you give a little tzedakah, eat a fruit you haven't eaten in this season, and make shachianu and Bora Priya 8, and then shachianu, and the 7 fruits of Israel that's famous for. See if you could eat chita, wheat, seora, barley, geffen, grapes, grape juice, potato, figs, rimon, pomegranates, dates, olives, spice. So those are the 7 fruits. Try to find. Also, people say almonds. You know, the almond tree has grown. It's the story of Israel. There's a song. There's a song about almonds, which is also one of the nuts of Israel. That's Israel's famous for.
So what are the 7 fruits again?
Wheat,
grapes?
barley, geffen, which is grapes, grape juice, grapes, zayis, olives, figs, dates, and rimon, pomegranates.
So, geffen means grapes? That's the brand. Yeah. Now I get it.
Geffen. Yeah. Geffen. Geffen comes from grapes. So now we're going to go into the story of the week, the parsha, and it's called, anybody knows which parsha we're in? Yisro, Jethro.
Oh.
Jethro. Who is Jethro? Who's Yisro? Anybody remember from the previous Torah class?
The father-in-law of Moses.
Very good. The father-in-law of Moses. When Moses runs away from Egypt because they want to kill him, because he killed the Egyptian slave driver. Remember the story? He ends up in the desert in Midian. He saves the daughters of Jethro, the 7 daughters from the other shepherds who don't allow them to water their sheep till the end of the day because they're angry. They're angry at Jethro, as we discussed, because he is the Kohen Midian. He is the most, like, the highest ranking official and politician in Midian. And it says that Yisro was such a brilliant person. He knew every religion, every form of idolatry he experienced, and he went through everybody's theology. So he was not only a leader, he was very wealthy, and he also knew everything. And so then Moshe, so the girls come back and he says, why are you back so early? And they say, what do you mean? There was a guy, a shepherd who came. He chased away the other shepherds. He let us water our sheep first. That's what happened. So he said, to bring him home for dinner. I want to meet this guy. And he's betrothed to Tzipporah, the oldest daughter of Jethro. And they have 2 sons. And now, after the burning bush, it's time for Moshe to return to Egypt to meet up with his brother and say, let my people go. On the way back to Egypt, Aaron meets him. He says, listen, you can't bring your family here. It's too dangerous. Send them back. So he sends his wife and children back to his father-in-law, and he proceeds. Now the Jews have left Egypt, and they're coming back to the Sinai desert to get the Torah. This is where the story begins. And there's a very fascinating slew of questions. One, if this is the Torah portion where we're going to see and experience the giving of the Torah, why is the Torah portion called Jethro, Yisro?
The only Torah portion that's named after a non-Jew.
Yeah, even though then nobody was officially Jewish, because till the giving of the Torah, the concept conversion didn't really happen. So Yisro, Jethro, shouldn't the Torah portion be called the giving of the Torah, Moshe, but Yisro? Interesting that God would choose to name this Torah portion Jethro, Yisro. And then the Talmud says something very fascinating based on the Torah reading that I'm going to read to you right now. Vayishma Yisro Kohen Midian, Chaysen Moshe, and Jethro, the priest of Midian, the father-in-law of Moshe, heard as Kol Asher Selakim LaMoshe, everything that God did with Moshe, the Yisrael, and to the Israelites, Amai, his nation, Ki Yotzi Hashem es Yisrael miMitzrayim, that God had taken Israel out of Egypt. So Jethro heard everything that happened, right? All the miracles with the plagues. News spreads fast. Okay? So why did he come to meet Moshe at Sinai? Because he heard everything that happened, right? So he comes to Sinai to meet up with the Jewish nation. And the Torah tells us why, because he heard all the miracles, he heard all the fantastic stories. He came to meet up with Moshe and the Jewish people. And then the commentaries say he converted, he decided to accept the Jewish religion and be at the giving of the Torah too. He wanted to become one of the people. No one forced him to convert. He wanted to become. At that time, if you took upon yourself to come and receive the Torah, you became a Jew. Now the same thing. If you want to convert, you have to have a halachic conversion. You can't just say, oh, I want to be Jewish. You have to go through the whole process and so on. Okay, so the Talmud picks up on this passage and says, why did Yisro come? I mean, well, why is the Talmud asking this? We know why he came. He heard what happened. So 3 sages give 3 opinions. Rabbi Joshua says he heard of the war of Amalek against the Israelites and he came. Rabbi Eliezer Hamudai says he heard of the giving of the Torah and he came. And Rabbi Eliezer says he heard about the splitting of the sea, he came. So 3 rabbis now say Well, there's a reason he came. One, he heard about the giving of the Torah. Well, I went backwards. One, he heard about the Amalekim fighting the Jews. And three, he heard about the splitting of the sea. Well, why do they disagree with the passage in the Torah? The Torah passage says clearly he came because he heard everything that happened in Egypt. Why do they feel there's another opinion here of why he came? Why do they feel that it needs clarity? And they don't agree, you notice. Each one says something else. So I want to first of all say, what was this war with Amalek? Anybody, Diane, you want to say something? What was this war of Amalek that we're talking about? Anybody know?
I think all the other people were, they respected the Jews and they let them pass.
Right.
And he did not.
Very good. So there's a very interesting story that happened as the Jews are heading into the Sinai desert. They're not even going near the nation of Amalek. They're nowhere near Amalek. Yet Amalek decides to come attack. And of course, God protects the Jews, and he says, and the Amalekim should be completely wiped out. And every day in our prayers, we say it. Remember that every day we have to wipe out the nation of Amalek. Now, what's the story? Why did Yisro hear about Amalek, the war of Amalek that he came? Why would it didn't say the victory of Amalek, and that's why he came, the war of Amalek. This is an interesting question, right? Normally say, I heard about the victory, so I came to see this nation who was victorious over Amalek. But you have to understand Amalek first. You have to understand Amalek. Amalek had such chutzpah like no one else. You have to say they had such chutzpah that you can't even believe the chutzpah that they had. The chutzpah that they had. What was the chutzpah? The chutzpah is that they just saw what happened to Paro, how he was swallowed up, and the plagues. They just saw all this. Yeah. And then they have the chutzpah to attack when they know how the Egyptians just suffered with these all miraculous events, the chutzpah of a nation. And why did they attack? Did Israel pass by their territory? Were they threatened that Israel would come, steal from them, take over their country? Israel wasn't even passing by Amalek. They were far from Amalek. A nation says, let's attack first before we're attacked. Or we're afraid they're going to come after us. But God did not lead them even past Amalek. And Amalek came out, found the Jews, and attacked. So you have to understand what Amalek is.
They went out of their way.
Very good. Who also is like that?
Hamas.
Did Israel ever threaten Hamas? Did Israel say, we're coming into Gaza to take your land, your people, your money? No.
We gave it to them. Yeah.
And this story of Amalek is the story of what's happening, that people hate us just because they hate us. Sometimes you hate someone, they took your money, they took your business, they took your land, they stole from you, they outwitted you. But the baseless hatred. So when Yisro saw that they warred against the Jews, not because of any reason, but because they hate Jews, he said there must be something very special with these Jews. No one attacks a nation if they're just nobodies. So he came to see, what is it about this Jewish nation that Amalek would just attack without a reason? And not only that, why do Paro, right, also tortured the Jews? Why don't we say in our daily prayers, let's erase the name of Paro every single day? Why every day only do we say, erase the memory of Amalek, erase the memory of Amalek, but not about Paro? Wasn't Paro equally evil? The answer is Paro didn't attack the Jews per se. He attacked God. I don't know who you are, God. I'm a God. A guy like that goes into the sea, he gets drowned. Well, he survived. His people get drowned. And every year we eat matzah, we remember Paro, how he was destroyed. That's it. We're done with Paro. Amalek is a much more vicious, insidious evil. Why? Amalek didn't go after God. Amalek said, let's go after the Jews. They just left slavery. They're weak. They're vulnerable. They're insecure. They have a slave mentality. Let's go after them. Let's go after the Jews. That God can't forgive. You want to come after me? I'll throw you in the ocean. You're gone. You're coming after my people who are vulnerable, downtrodden, broken, just survived 210 years of slavery and persecution. Now, this is something that every day you have to say, erase the name of Amalek. Because Amalek is really an enemy that lives inside us. It's that feeling says, you're not worthy. You're a slave. You're nobody. Amalek came and said to the nation, who are you? You're nobodies. You're slaves. We're going to come after you. You don't deserve to live. So that is more insidious than someone attacking God, saying, I don't believe in your God. That's it. There, you get swallowed up in the water and you're gone. You have 10 plagues, you're finito, petito. Amalek is really something that lives inside our psyche, where you wake up in the morning and you don't feel worthy. Why am I in this world? Am I worthy of anything? Do I deserve anything? You know, maybe I don't deserve to live. Maybe the Arabs and the Muslims are right. Maybe we don't deserve the land of Israel. Maybe they're right. Maybe we're wrong. So God says every day when you say your prayers, you have to say, erase the memory of the Amalek. Erase that idea that you're not worthy, that you're downtrodden, that you're broken. You're not. You're a nation, you're a people, you're worthy of life, you're worthy of success, you're worthy to walk the face of the earth. So when it comes to Amalek, you can erase them totally. Paro, we eat matzah, we can handle it. Because Paro, again, went against ideology of a God. That's not him. Amalek went after the Jews. He went after the individual weak person and said, now's a good time to attack. You're nobodies. And I'm going to show you you're nobodies. You know, think about it. If the IDF went on vacation, there'd be no Jews, God forbid, left. If Hamas went on vacation, would we go after their people? Would we go after their land? Would we go after their money? It'd be peace. So think of Amalek in modern day terms. They're people who want us gone, God forbid. They're not interested in truth, reality, peace, coexistence. They want destruction, destruction, destruction. They don't feel a Jew deserves to live. They're Amalek. If they go on vacation, we're in luck. We go on vacation, it's over. Just put it in context here. And that's what Amalek is. They want to come after us just because we exist, for no other reason but because we exist. That's who Amalek is. So when Yisro saw that there's a nation that has baseless hatred, they hate because they hate. He said, I have to see, there must be something about this people that generation after generation, they come after us for no reason. Why did Hitler come after the Jews? Why did the Romans, the Greeks? Why? The Spanish Inquisition. Why did they come after us? For what reason? Because baseless hatred. They are the generation of Amalek repeating itself time and time again. As we know, Haman came from the Amalek. Haman also decided he's going to destroy all the Jews. They're not like us. They're not like us, he said. They're spread out. They're not like us. We don't need them. The second reason Yisro came is because he saw the splitting of the sea. What did he see? He saw how the Jewish people live miraculously. We live above nature because our whole lives is a miracle. Again, which other nation can survive, would have survived? We are the Roman Empire. We are the Caesars. We're the Syrians. Even the Nazis, Yamach Shemai, the power, they're gone. And the Jews were 0.25% in this world. We're a dot in the ocean. And yet the Jews have survived. Why? The splitting of the sea. Every moment of our days, we are living a miraculous life. Our existence is miraculous. Our lives are miraculous. Everything about us is miraculous. A seed found buried, dried out, suddenly bears fruit years later. This is the story of the Jewish people. And Yisro said, a nation that's lives and existence is on the plateau of miracles, I want to be part of them. I want to be part of them. It's inexplainable. No one can explain how we're still here today. And the last thing he said is that the Jewish people were getting the Torah. I want to be part of that too. Why? What did he see that the Torah is about? About the Jewish nation, what makes us who we are, our power, God's wisdom, the laws, the rules, the regulations, giving us a foundation and purpose in life. This is what he saw in the Torah, that we're governed by laws. I heard a beautiful story with Rabbi Lau, the chief Rabbi Israel Meir Lau, the former chief rabbi of Israel, brilliant orator, like unbelievable. So he's in his office and a guy comes to see him. His name is Moshe Kaminsky. Moshe Kaminsky lived in the same city as Rabbi Lau, and they both were all taken to the concentration camps, Treblinka. And when they were rounded up, Moshe Kaminsky and Rabbi Lau, as little boys, ended up in an attic before they were discovered. So when they were rounding everyone up, there was a Jewish fellow who grabbed Rabbi Lau, a little boy, and Rabbi Lau's entire family, except for his brother, were killed by the Nazis. And they put them in an attic. And one of the little boys, Moshe's mother, was also in the attic. Another one's mother was also in the attic. And he was starving. So he saw this mother had a little bag of apples. So when she wasn't looking, Moshe Kaminsky grabbed out an apple and he bit into it and he started to eat the apple. As he bit into it, they heard the Nazis searching the house to round up the rest of the Jews. So they were all immediately silent. And he was caught in a quandary. He bit into the apple, but he can't chew the apple. He chews the apple, they'll hear the crunch. So he's sitting there, he says, for like 2.5 hours with his apple in his mouth. Anyway, that's the story. At the end, the Nazis did not discover them yet. They were later captured. So he's now a grown adult, and he asks to see Rabbi Lau. He comes to Rabbi Lau, and he says, Rabbi Lau, I'm already an older man. I came to bet mechila. I came to bet forgiveness. Why? He says, I don't know if you remember the attic. He says, of course I remember. When we were little boys, I took one of your mother's apples without permission. I stole from her bag. And I never, ever forgave myself for stealing from her bag. I was starving, but still I stole. So I'm coming here to bet mechila. I'm getting older. I want to beg forgiveness. And I'm going to be writing a book about the Holocaust, about my life. And I want to tell the story of the apple, but I can't tell the story without telling you how I felt. For years, I've been carrying the guilt. Why did I take the apple without permission? And Rabbi Lau was like, of course, you were starving. Like, who would ever suggest that a little boy taking an apple is theft in a sense? So, of course, that he forgave him. He said, of course, I'll forgive you, but there's nothing to forgive. So that's what Yisro saw. He saw the Jewish people are governed by a book of rules, of morals and ethics that lead us, direct us, and are our guiding light. And he said that this is what leads the Jewish nation. This is what holds us together. I want to be part of such a people. A people that adheres. I want to beg forgiveness because I took an apple during a Nazi invasion. as a little boy, and he wants forgiveness for stealing an apple. This is the Jewish nation, who we are as people. He wants to be part of such people. That's what he saw, Yisro. That's what he saw. So when a person looked, that's why the Torah portion is named after him. Because his quest to be part of us highlighted the strength of who we are. We live with a miraculous life. We are guided by a book of morals and ethics way beyond societies, constitutions, and declarations of independence, and so on. And 3, that were hated and attacked for one reason only, because we bear the name Jew. We have a Jewish soul. So it must be something unique about a nation that's attacked for no other reason but because you declared you're a Jew. So those 3 things, he said, I want to be part of this people. And he became part of the Jewish nation. There's another very beautiful insight along the guidelines. God, tells Moshe concept of census. How do God tell Moshe to count the Jewish people? Who remembers? And take a census. They were all supposed to give a half a shekel, right? A half a shekel, because nobody's whole without someone else. So a half a shekel. So instead of Moshe going around with a paper and a pen and saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, everybody bought a half a shekel. They counted the half a shekels, and they knew how many people there were in the Jewish nation. That's how they counted. So why don't we count? Who knows? Why couldn't Moshe go around like we do now in America? We make a census, we have computers, and we count every family and every Bubby and Zaidi. Why not count? Why are machatzis a shekel? So you say an ein hara, right? You don't want to give an ein hara. You don't want to give an ein hara, so that's why we're not counting. That's the simple reason. I remember my grandfather had my grandparents had 9 children. So my grandfather was by the Lubavitcher Rebbe for an audience. So he says to the Rebbe, Mazel Tov, I now had my 17th grandchild. So the Rebbe looks at him and says, grandchildren, you don't count. So that's why people always ask me, how many grandchildren? I said, not enough. But if they insist, I let them count, because the Rebbe told my grandfather. So we don't count. Why we don't know when an ein hara? Poo, 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 we say. How many grandchildren? 5. Poo, 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 poo. Poo, poo, can ein hara, right?
Yeah.
But there's a deeper reason we don't count. Or, you ever go into a shul and they go, not 1, not 2, not 3. Because they don't want to say 1, 2, 3. They're counting the minyan, not 1, not 2. And you say, oh my gosh, the guys are nuts. Or some people count with a passage. They use a Jewish passage. Let's say the passage has 15 words, you count. Now, the reason is a much more deeper, beautiful reason. I saw this. I heard it from Sir Jonathan Sachs. He says that if Moshe would count the Jews over the generations, we would be depressed because there's so few of us. This is the Jewish nation, there's nobody. And more than that, so God says, give a half a shekel. Give a half a shekel, because don't count your people by numbers, but by what they contribute. How do you judge a person? By what they contribute to society. So though we're less than 0.25% of this universe, who won more Nobel Peace Prizes than anyone? The Jews. Authors, poets, literature, songwriters, musicians, contributions to society, we are above and beyond our numbers. So we're not counted by 1, 2, 3, how many we are. Physically, we're counted by what we give. The Machatzis HaShekel says, don't count the Jew by how many numbers, but what they contribute to society, what they give to society, what they give to this world. That's how you judge a Jew. not by numbers. Oh, there's 100 million of them. No wonder they're so successful. There's so many of them. They're like gypsies. There's so few of us in this world. But the success and the contribution to society is how we're counted. That's why people always say the Jews are taking over the world. Really, there's so many of us, we could take over the world? We're invading the world. It just, we seem so public because their contributions are so great. That's the story of the Jewish people. So we're counted not by number, but by we contribute. We contribute a half a shekel, and we contribute and gift so many things to society at large. That's how we're counted. That's how we're judged. So when Yisro was also a patch in the panim, it was a slap in the face of the nations. Why? Jethro, the high priest of Midian, who knew every religion, every idolatry, and experienced them all, he went with the Jews. Whoa, were they angry? That's why it says, Kayin Midian, the priest of Midian. It could have just said Yisro, the father-in-law of Moshe, went. Kayin, oh my gosh. The whole world saw one of the most prestigious priests and idolaters went to be with those Jews and converted and became one of them. Mm-hmm. That was the story of also Yisro. That's why the Torah portion is called Yisro, the power of one man to show the world the truth. That Torah is the truth. And that's what's kept the Jewish nation. The story, I told it many times, with the Dalai Lama. He wrote the book, The Jew and the Lotus. It was a book written about him. He called in the rabbis. He said, I've been exiled from Tibet. This is my country. How do I keep my religion alive when I'm not in my country? And the Jewish people have been exiled for generations. How do we keep our Judaism alive? The answer is our Judaism is not tied to a country. It's tied to the Torah. It's a traveling, wherever we are, the Torah is. Therefore, we cannot ever be lost, because it's the Torah that keeps us who we are. Again, the rules, the regulations that ties us together. If you go to Tibet, go to India, go to Israel, go to Borough Park, go to Westport, Connecticut, and meet up with a Jew. He's putting on tefillin. Wherever you go, it's the same pair of tefillin, head and arm. Doesn't matter if he speaks Chinese, Portuguese, French, Japanese. It's the same pair of tefillin that Moses wore, your grandfather's wearing, my son is wearing, my grandson is wearing. The Torah is what kept us who we are, no matter where we are. That's who we are. So that's what Yisro saw. That's what Yisro saw. And now I want to share something that one of my favorite things that I've studied this year. When I saw it a few days ago, I was like, this is really powerful. So they come before Sinai and they're ready to accept the Torah. I'm using Cliff Notes now. We're moving forward. And what is the first line of the 10 Commandments at Sinai? Anybody know the Hebrew or English? Even English.
You shall not take my name in vain.
That's one of them. Almost. Right. That's a good Almost. One. No, okay. Yeah, good. Anoichi Hashem Elokecha.
I am your God.
I am your God, your God. Hashem Elokecha, your God. Now, something fascinating. The word Anochi is what language? Is it Hebrew? Is it Chinese?
Armenian? I don't know.
Aramaic? No.
Keep guessing. What did you say, Dan?
Armenian? No.
Guess again. Where are they coming from?
It's Arabic?
No.
Egyptian.
Egyptian. Did you know the word Anochi is Egyptian? Anoch, which means I. So how is it that the first opening phrase of the 10 Commandments starts with an Egyptian word? Anybody know? Yes, whatever. Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am God, your God. starts off the 10 Commandments, the giving of the Torah?
Well, God wanted the people to understand him, and that was their language at the time, I guess.
Excellent. Very good. That's what Rashi says. Rashi says they just left Egypt and they were used to hearing Egyptian. So God, to endear and have them listening, you start off with the language of where they're coming from. Very good. You're like Rashi, Diane. Excellent. But there's a little bit of a contradiction here. Why? The Torah says clearly the reason the Jews were redeemed from Egypt is because they didn't give up three things: their language, Lashon HaKodesh, their way of dressing, and their language, the way of dressing, and what was the third one? And their clothing, the way they dressed. They kept this certain style of dressing. Everyone knew they were the Israelites. So how could you say that maybe they didn't understand Hebrew or God was endearing when one of the reasons that they were redeemed was because they kept the language. So they did know the language. They did speak Hebrew in Egypt. But Rashi says it was to endear him to them because Egyptian was their language. And also building on what Diane said, then why didn't all the 10 Commandments in Egyptian? If you're trying to appeal to the language of where they lived for 210 years, everything should be in Egyptian. Why switch? Anoichi and then Hashem Alekech and everything else in Hebrew. So
I guess it was to catch their attention.
Catch your attention. That's what Rashi says. So Chassidus explains something very deep here. And your answer is correct because Rashi says it, Diane. It's not incorrect. I want to know, go deeper now. Anoichi, God says, I am Hashem Lekecha, your God. When you look at yourself as the Anoichi, you look at yourself like the Egyptian slave. You look at yourself like I just was a slave, again, downtrodden. And I'm not worthy of the Torah. I'm not worthy of a relationship with God because look who I am. God says, Anoichi, Hashem Lekecha. Even when you look at yourself as the slave, the downtrodden, not worthy of a relationship with God, Hashem Alekecha, I am your God, no matter what. My relationship is not contingent on where you are in your life. My relationship is contingent on the fact you have gotten the Torah from me, and that binds us together. So when you look at yourself in the mirror and you wake up in the morning, listen, I don't have a relationship with God. I'm estranged. I'm a slave to my addictions, to my behavior. I don't want to do Torah and mitzvahs. That's not for me. I'm disillusioned with what happened October 7th. I don't want to be with God anymore. That's not for me. Anoichi Hashem Alekecha. Even when you view yourself as an Egyptian, enslaved, estranged, a non-believer, Hashem Alekecha, I'm always going to be your God. This is the opening phrase of the 10 Commandments, defining that our relationship is dependent on something much more powerful, higher, greater, our soul, that can never disconnect, no matter how you view yourself. And now let's take it even one step further. Anoichi Hashem Alekecha. When you find yourself in the darkest place in your life, when you find yourself as a slave, persecuted, shackled, in the tunnels of Gaza, burnt, persecuted, or beyond help, no one can ever help me. I'm a goner. My addictions are so great. My estrangement is so great. No one can rescue me. No one can help me. I don't deserve to live anymore. I'm ready to kill myself. Anoichi, and in those darkest moments is when you discover your connection to God. Sometimes we fall so dark, so deep, and we feel we can never get out. And there's nowhere to look. We look and we say, you know what? There's only one place, God. It's sometimes in your darkest moments, your most helpless moments, your most challenging moments, that you discover Hashem Alekecha, I am God, your God. So when you find yourself as an Anoichi, a metaphor for the darkest place in your life. You're a slave. You're an Egyptian slave. You're shackled. You'll never get out of this life. There's nowhere I can turn. I'm a goner. You know Hashem Alekecha. You discover God. Sometimes we fall so dark. The only thing that can pull us out is knowing there's a God there that's going to save me and take me out. Because no one else can. That's a young lady that kept Shabbos. She refused to cook and do anything. You'd say, why? Of course she would be forgiven. She's a hostage. She kept herself. The girl who got the Tillim, the Siddur, right? Accidentally, they found from a soldier and they gave her a prayer book. That just happened to be, she asked for a prayer book. Of course, they wouldn't give it to her. They found one Nebuch from one of the soldiers and they brought it to her.
Uh-huh.
These small snippets is that in your darkest moments sometimes is when you find God. When you're riding high, you're not looking for God. Let's face it. Most people are happy, healthy. What do I need God in my life? I'm a self-made woman. I'm successful. I have everything I want and need. I even got my new Birkin bag. I don't need God in my life right now. God is when I go to Shul and Yom Kippur, I'll talk to God. Right now, unfortunately, it's times when we fall so deep into darkness that we discover God because we know there's nothing else. No one's coming to save me. No one can save me. So that's when we sometimes in our darkest moments, we find God. So there's two parts. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Unfortunately, at times in my darkest moments, Anochi, when I'm in the abyss, Hashem Elokecha, I realize God can help me. I reach out to God. And then Anochi, even when I'm disillusioned and disconnected, Hashem Elokecha, no, I'm always your God. I'm always there for you. Even when you feel, I don't believe in God. I don't need a God. I'm done. Hashem Elokecha, I'm always your God. Two sides to this relationship. In our darkest moments and at times when, okay. Who knows if God plays a role in my life? And do I deserve to have God in my life? Because I'm an Egyptian. I'm a slave. I'm a slave to society. I'm a slave to my finances. I'm a slave to my desires. Hashem Elokecha, I'm always your God. No matter where you find yourself, I'm there for you. And this is the opening phrase of the Torah because it defines our relationship with God. That's why it's so powerful. It's not dependent on behavior. It's not dependent on relationship. Of course, you want the best and you want to always build your relationship, but no, God is always there waiting for you to connect. That's what the Torah sealed the relationship. Heaven and earth kissed. Heaven came down to earth. Earth went up to heaven, and the Torah bound us together eternally. It made us one. That's why you can reach for the heavens. That's what the Torah accomplished. That unbelievable bond. That unbelievable bond. That's something to digest a little bit. It's a powerful scenario that the Jews found in themselves in this Torah portion. Does anybody want to add anything or say anything? So Sir Rabbi Sachs says something very beautiful. I want to end off with this. He says that God didn't want to just give them a Torah. Here, take the Torah. You must follow the rules. God asked the nation, do you want my Torah? Is it something you want? And 3 times the Jews said, Na'aseh v'nishma, yes, we want the Torah. And the passage reads, in every single time they were united as one in saying, yes, we want the Torah. Yes, we want the Torah. But the 3rd time, when God asks them in the next Torah, in the next book of the Torah, there it doesn't say they were united when they said, yes, we want the Torah. So Jonathan Sachs draws a very interesting parallel that there's 2 parts of the Torah. There's the nasa, the doing, the action, the law. For example, kosher. If you're keeping kosher, you're keeping kosher. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Kosher is kosher. Shabbos is Shabbos. Prayer is prayer. There's no debate. But then there's the other part of the Torah is hearing the Torah. What's the hearing? That's where our intellect comes to play. So collectively, the law is the law for the Jewish nation. But understanding, debating, analyzing the Torah, that everybody's an individual. The individuality of the Torah. So Nasa is at the end of the day, as much as the Talmudic scholars debated the laws, debated the concepts, there's a conclusion. How do we light the Hanukkah menorah? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Not 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Kosher is kosher. If it has fins and scales, chews its cud and has split hoofs, is slaughtered properly, koshered properly, it's kosher. So that's the law. But understanding, debating the philosophy of Torah, that's everyone's an individual. Diane sees it one way, I see it one way, Robin sees it the other way, Margaret sees it another way. So Nasa, the way we do it, we all do it the same when you're following the letter of the law. Nishma, how we hear it, how we internalize it, our intellectually, that everybody's an individual.
How we internalize it.
So Jonathan Sachs says that even when you have the letter of the law, which is what we have, we still have the ability to intellectualize, philosophize in our own way as individuals. And that's the strength of the Torah. That's the strength of the Torah. That's why there's so many commentaries. But you notice when it comes to the actual action, there's no later, you could say whatever you want, but at the end of the day, there is the law. Shabbos is always the seventh day. It's not going to change because you and I are such big intellectuals and we decided Monday is a better day for Shabbos. Right? It's not going to change. The animals that God listed out are not kosher, are still not kosher. There hasn't been a creation of a new animal that now you could say, well, is it kosher or isn't it kosher? It's no such a thing. Whatever God enumerated as the kosher animals and the non-kosher animals are till this day kosher and non-kosher. No one can change it. You might want to debate on how to shecht a giraffe, but a giraffe is a kosher animal. If you shecht it, why don't we have giraffe meat? Because they don't know how to shecht it. It's a very difficult thing to slaughter properly, so no one eats giraffe meat. But is a giraffe kosher? Absolutely.
Wow.
So Nasa, the Jew says, we will do. And Nishma, we will hear, each on our own way. We will internalize, intellectualize, debate, philosophize in our own way. And that is the beauty and the strength of Torah, that whatever way you do it, at the end of the day, you do it, you do the task, you do the law, but there's room always for the debate, the analysis. Now, that's what we said a few weeks ago. Faith in God that cannot tolerate questions isn't faith. And faith that is only dependent on answers is also not faith. But are we allowed to question? Of course. In other words, the Torah can handle your questioning. It demands questioning. It demands debate. It demands analysis. But at the end of the day, we have the letter of the law, what we follow. So that's I thought that's it's an interesting insight. It's an interesting insight. So anybody have anything they want to add or say or? Okay, so we'll end off over here.
Great.
Just remember, Anoichi, wherever you are, Hashem Elokecha, God is your God.